weekend many times, but the one way is the escrow holds the 15%, and we do some paperwork to facilitate a recovery of the 15%, so they don't have to send it into the IRS. That would normally take 4 months. That is very much delayed this year. I don't even know what it's going to take, 6 months probably at least. And then the other way is the money goes into the IRS, and the state of California has a withholding tax as well, of course. And the foreign seller just does a tax return the next year and says, hey, I didn't make very much profit or any profit. Can I have my 15% back? And can I have my 3.3% back from California? And they'll give it to you. But the problem is that the IRS is having major problems. What major problems am I talking about? So major that they did not work on any foreign seller tax issue at all for the months of April and May. How do I know that? Because they were evacuated from their offices due to a couple CV outbreaks, and they were not allowed to go back in for 2 months, the months of April and May. And all the work in the foreign area must be done from the offices. They review passports for I-10s. They review a lot of sensitive information. It's not the kind of work they will let them do from home. So the work simply hasn't been done for 2 months. Without that, we're sure. We've got no mail. We get mail. We have hundreds of clients. We get letters from the IRS every day about this client or that client. We haven't gotten one letter from the IRS in 2 months. What we read is that they went back to their offices as of June 1st. They were ordered back. And believe me when I tell you, because I read about this, a lot of them don't want to go. They're nervous. These IRS offices are cramped offices. The virus is still out there. But I was heard they were ordered back in June 1st, and we're waiting to see. We still haven't gotten any mail. It was a crazy week, we all know, last week, so I could easily see maybe they didn't really go in last week, but I'm hoping this week, and we start to see the flow pick up again. But whether it is what I would call the early withholding certificate, where the escrow holds the money, and then we're waiting for permission for the IRS to release it, or whether it's a tax return, the sale was in 2019, we're helping them get the money back here in 2020. We've done their tax return, and it's all a matter of waiting now for the IRS to send the refund. It is on complete hold until I see, frankly, evidence that it's back up and running. And that is basically as of April 1st through the month of May. And it's sort of, even though I've read it's June 1st that they're going to pick it up, I haven't seen it yet. So because of the coronavirus, the IRS is in a big backlog, wait and see moment. You can read articles about how there's, quote, trailers full of mail that has piled up for them to go through. It's a mess, everybody. The IRS, if it's an interesting read, if you find this stuff interesting, is in complete disarray because of this pandemic. And they're going to have to play a lot of catch up. And, the more I read it, the less I can see they're excited about getting back into the offices. So I'm really a little concerned, and we're sort of keeping our fingers crossed that they pick it back up at a regular pace, because the backlogs will simply get longer and longer. That is just the reality of the situation. That is our area, and we see every day. And we've told our clients, unfortunately, and they've been very understanding so far anyway, that this is just a very unusual time. And please be aware that withholding taxes will take longer to be refunded, whether it's, 8288B with the, while the escrow holds it, they just sold it in 2020, or for a refund from 2019, everything's going to take longer. And I don't know what longer means, but I would just say, since they haven't done work in 2 months, I'm adding 2 months onto any kind of regular waiting period. And hopefully that's the correct calculation, but honestly, I don't know. And I try to keep everybody as up to speed as I can on these developments. So big problems with the IRS so far in 2020, big problems. Let me go to the, let me see if I do this 1 second, guys. Next slide. Now, if you have a foreign seller who's selling, I want you to give them a good piece of advice. They're going to want a U.S. bank account, if at all possible. A lot of people have a house here, they sell it, they're not from the United States, they never bother opening a U.S. bank account, and that's understandable. But there's a problem if they don't open a U.S. bank account, and that is They are expecting, as I've already said, they're going to take 15% times the gross sales price at the time of closing. Doesn't matter if they made it's a loss, doesn't matter. It's going to happen. So we always have foreign sellers who are in search of large refunds. Yes, there is a process where we can get it in the same year where the escrow would send it to them if we got approval through the IRS. But a lot of times even that won't give them a full refund. It might give them a full refund if they had a loss. They may have a sliver still to get back from the IRS, and they'll definitely have money from California. And of course, we have plenty of clients who never do the in-year application. The money just goes in and they contact us after the sale's already concluded and they want to get their money back the next year. And that's fine. The IRS will give it to them, subject to their headaches. But how do you actually get the money? There's one of two ways, and this is where it gets tricky for the foreign investor. The foreign investor can either get a direct deposit, but the IRS will only direct deposit to a U.S. bank account. Or if they don't have a U.S. bank account, the IRS and state of California, by the way, refunds will come from both probably, is happy to send a check. They'll send it to an address in the United States if the foreign person has one. I hope they do. That's better. Or they will send it to any address that is given to escrow that accompanies the withholding tax into the IRS, such as an address in China, such as an address in India, etc. And that'll be a check made out to the person. The problem, of course, with the latter option is these checks, like half the time, if they're sent overseas, never make it, as you might imagine. It's 50-50. The IRS does not use any kind of special postal service. They just use regular mail. The more obscure the location, the less the odds are that this check is actually going to arrive. That puts us in a cycle of, we have to request a new one. It's another 6 months. It can get to a period of years before these people ever get their money back if they have requested the check method, i.e. if they did not have a U.S. bank account where the money could be direct deposited. They definitely want to steer clear of the check alternative and have the direct deposit if they can, but they're not here. And I think all banks here in the U.S. are expecting you to walk in and open an account. They're not going to do it for you over the phone. So what is a foreign person to do now that I've stressed the importance of having a U.S. bank account, but they're not here to actually open it? Okay, the best answer I have is only for people of one country, China. And I'm going to let Angela talk about this here in a second. But what we've discovered, and we're looking to see if this is the case in other countries as well, but we haven't found it. In China, East West Bank, there may be others, will actually allow you to open a U.S. bank account without going to the U.S. via an East West Bank office or online. I'm going to let Angela describe it in 1 second. From China. This is a huge advantage because without having to come to the U.S. and being able to open up a U.S. bank account will allow the direct deposit, which will avoid this huge potential disaster of wondering where's the check and how do I get the check, and they don't have to come to the U.S. to open it. That is something they definitely want to do. This is only available, to our understanding, to Chinese citizens who are in China, and I'm going to let Angela talk about it in 1 second. And again, we're exploring other countries to see but we haven't come across any, to see if any other countries can let you do this. As far as we know, foreign sellers from any other country who are not currently in the U.S. are going to be sort of out of luck and are going to have to go through the mailing method. But foreign investors from China potentially can open up a U.S. bank account while in China, which is terrific. Let me let Angela describe that process, and I will come back for further discussion.
So basically, this process is the clients can download the East West Bank, the apps, and because China currently has this facial identification ID card, so they need to, each clients in China needs to upload their ID front and the back side, and then to pass the identification check. And because those ID are linked to their phone number, so it's very secure. So they could be able to have this online banking account while they are in China to receive the proceeds when they sell the property, and also receive the refunds from the IRS and the state of California. Right now, we know China mainland is the only country when they could do this, now including the clients from Taiwan and Hong Kong.
Okay. So thank you, Angela. So that's important. If I had a Chinese seller 2019, 2020, I would absolutely be encouraging them to open up a US bank account. They'll thank you for it. It will help them get their money back from the IRS and or California. And without it, my second best answer, if they're not from China and they're not here, is when they close their deal, make sure to leave a US mailing address, a friend, a cousin, because any refunds, if you're getting a check, it'll be mailed to the seller's name. The check will be in the seller's name, but I don't like mail going abroad. I think it sets up a long-term scenario where the people are waiting forever for their money, and it's a mess. Canada's fine, but outside of Canada, it starts to get dicey. And the more obscure the place, as you can imagine, the more unlikely it is they're going to get that check, and the longer we have to wait. I'm still chasing down a check for a guy from the Philippines who's driving me crazy, but we're working. So that's an aside. Okay, so now we're going to go into a little bit of not our normal area, but we'll give you our best guess. We talked to 1 million realtors, escrow, investors all day from around the world, although a good 40% are from China. And we'll give you what we take as their perspective and what we think is the likelihood that they're going to be interested in buying and or selling real estate going forward. So let's start, guys, with what our perspective from our anecdotal observations are from the Chinese investors, and then I'll go to some of the other investors. Let's let Angela walk us through what the Chinese investor potentially is going to do with respect to U.S. real estate now and going forward.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me today. And our company, Directs, has been helping thousands of foreign real estate investors every year. 40% to 50% of these investors are from China. And I have been communicating with clients from China in the past few months. Every day, these clients, including the sellers, buyers, and also potential investors who are looking for the investment opportunities in the Southern California. And we see the Chinese population remaining very confident in their own financial situation after the COVID-19 lockdown, and the businesses remain cautious, but almost all offices, factories, schools, and the retail outlets have reopened. During the past Labor Day long weekend in China, from May 1st to May 5th this year, China recorded 150 million tourist trips domestically. More than 4,000 major tourist sites are open to visitors, bringing the tourist revenue of 6.79 billion. The recent consumer survey shows the confidence in domestic travel rose by 60% over the past months. We can definitely see a strong recovery. And our clients, especially who invested in Southern California, have a government job stability and generous pensions. They are in their 30s and 40s. They largely have only 1 or 2 children. Their parents also have generous retirement benefits. So with that confidence and relative financial stability, we haven't seen a rush by these Chinese investors to sell their properties in California. And we also see they have a strong desire in the long term, perhaps after 2020, they will still interested in invest in California real estate. Obviously, the short-term challenges exist. The current low mortgage interest rates in the US, which also attract some Chinese buyers later in 2020 or 2021, because the capital outflow restrictions by the Chinese government in the past couple years, and this is very difficult for the Chinese investors to transfer their money from the China to the US. So they don't mind to pay a high down payment and then take the advantage of the current low mortgage interest rates. We also see a potential drop in home prices. Maybe right now we haven't seen a big drop, but it might happen in the later this year or next year. Is also signal a green light to cash flush Chinese investors looking for bargains. And this similar situation we haven't seen happened in 2008 financial crisis. We also see a spike in Chinese investors to Chinese investor transactions, because similar situations, the capital outflow restrictions, and this may encourage Chinese investors to sell the house, which the transaction between the buyers and the sellers all happen from China, and the sellers just have to reserve 20%, which could cover the commissions, selling expenses, 15% withholding tax from the IRS, and 3.33% from California withholding taxes. This among 20% of the sale price would require the US dollars, but the buyer can pay the seller the rest amount, 80% in Chinese currencies, which is very helpful. And in the short term, we also have seen a spike in selling from the Chinese parents who own the US properties. They own these US properties mainly for their children who attend the US colleges. But in February and March, before the lockdown, these students went back to China. They faced the problems when they can come back to the US to continue their schools. And since a lot of universities announced that they will have online classes in fall semester, so these students might not be very interested since they cannot experience the college lives. So we will see these people, this type of group of clients want to sell their properties. So this is the uncertainty because they don't know when their children can come back to the US. And Chinese citizens are sometimes still reluctant to travel to visit the US embassy in China for deeding and passport certifications, even though they opened the US embassies in China the last 2 months, because clients are still very nervous to travel by train or by airplane. So they face the problems, and especially right now, the US embassies in China remain closed. So because when these Chinese clients to sell the house, the first step for them to do is to obtain the US tax ID. Without the tax ID, they can never get their withholding tax back. The first step is to get their passport certified. They either have to go to the US embassy to get their passport certified. Certainly, that's not the option for now. And another option is they can FedEx their passport to our company, since Direct is a RS accept certifying agent, which allow us to certify the client's passport. And it's super important to get the tax ID at the time of closing. Otherwise, the clients will face the difficulties to get their large amount of withholding tax back the next year. We have seen very often many of these foreign clients couldn't get their withholding tax back in 2 or 3 years. Now I'm going to hand over to Michael.
Okay, yeah, the Chinese embassies were, I mean, the US embassies were open for the last couple of months. Now they closed again for a couple of weeks. I don't, because of the riots, I'm not sure. And they're closed again to the 26th. It goes to show you how difficult it is to count on an embassy abroad. And foreign sellers, we didn't talk about it too much, but they always have to get ITINs, ITINs, and we help them apply at closing. That is critical to them getting their money back even the next year. That's how the IRS identifies that it has the foreign seller's money. And one problem about getting ITINs is they need what's called a certified copy of their passport. Normally, one way to get a certified copy of the passport is, again, to go to the U.S. Embassy, as Angela was saying, but that's, you know, hit or miss now. So at least in that area, we can help we can't help them with the deeding and so forth, but if they want to forward us, if they don't mind, you know, FedExing their passport, we can get them a certified copy of the passport, and then we can get them the ITIN, which they will need when they sell, and that'll help them get their money back as quickly as possible, or at least the next year. ITIN is critical to the whole withholding tax process. That's more part of our normal presentation for another time, and we have PowerPoints on this topic, and I'm happy to email them to you if you like. That's just the general overview. Okay, so let me skip one more down here, and let's go to our thoughts on other countries, people from other countries, and, you know, who knows? We have a lot of Canadian clients as well. They're more in the resorty Palm Springs area. For those of you who don't know, the country of Canada like owns Palm Springs. But you know, they've had major difficulties, right? In March, right in the middle of their sort of getaway season, they all come down during the winter. The country told them to get back because the border was going to be closed, and it remains closed except for essential travel. And I just read families of Americans who are living there can now join them, but it's a crazy time. Basically, the Canadian-U.S. border remains closed, and you would have the same problems I've described in closing a deal if the person was in Canada, as if they were in the as they were in China. You'd still have to, use this out-of-state notary. We'd still have to get a certified copy of the passport. Canada remains in its own lockdown. They haven't cleared up this virus issue either. So it's tricky. Will the problems we've had here dissuade Canadians from buying? Will it lead to a rush in selling? We haven't seen a rush in selling. In our experience, Canadians buy real estate, particularly in California, to get out of the winters. And as long as the weather is still going to stink in Canada in the winter, I don't see a mad rush to the exits. They've had their own economic problems, so I think it still remains to be seen. A second house, of course, is a luxury, but a lot of them own nothing, not big houses. A lot of them own condos and so forth. Some own very nice houses, to be honest, multi-million-dollar houses, but a lot of Canadians own sort of getaway condos and complexes and so forth, mostly in the Coachella Valley, some in other areas, mostly to get out of the winter. And that's not so much for the Arcadia area as it is for the desert area, but you may run into the odd Canadian here. Hard to make a generalization. I would remain confident with them in general. I think the fundamentals of the lousy winters and they like to get out of them, especially as they get older, will remain the same. So I don't anticipate a big change in their interest in U.S. real estate one way or another. The rest of the world, my goodness, who's to say? We all know what has happened in Europe has had a heck of a time with the virus. We have plenty of European clients. I can't say as I've seen so many more looking to sell, but we aren't the ones who would necessarily know when they're buying. I'm guessing there haven't been a lot of Italian buyers lately, but I don't know that. We do have sort of the normal selling. I wouldn't say we've seen a spike in selling, like a rush to the exits. So I think it's really, really uncertain. If I had, if there was areas where I were to guess, there would be more interest in the United States than there was in the past. I suppose I would point to areas that weren't as economically devastated by the virus. We have a lot of Australian clients, and I don't know if that would change. They seem to have done okay. And you guys see the news just like I do. I don't think some of the other, Asian countries have done so poorly in the virus. A lot of them have handled it fairly well. We have a lot of clients from Singapore and some from Korea. They may express a greater interest in the United States as things sort of calm down here and so forth. They've been less economically harmed, I think, than the European clients. South America, obviously, we don't have many South American clients anyway, and I would certainly not be bullish on that part of the world now at all. But some of the Asian countries have done quite well, and they may have more interest than they had in the past, or at least the same. And we remain bullish, just to put a bow on it, despite all the turbulence, we still remain bullish on the Chinese consumer. We have to clear some hurdles, I think. But, as Angela said, and she knows very well, their financial fundamentals seem to remain pretty strong. And a lot of it's sort of government secured or government backed. So we kind of are confident that we probably are in a pause, but we're bullish in general on their interest in the long haul, based on our experiences. Angela's on all the chat boards, and she sees, and it's a turbulent time. But in general, I don't think we're, provided, the virus gets under control and things calm down a little bit. I think, as long as they remain financially sound themselves, we think that there's been a lot of interest in this area before, and we don't see why it would change down the road for years to come. So that's our guess. We're not real estate investor experts, but we do talk to people from around the world all the time. So that's the best we could do for now. Okay, so that is our basic overview. You can see here, if you want PowerPoints, I give newsletters if you want them on all the IRS craziness and other stuff that I see in our area. I don't do it very often, but if there's stuff that I think is important, I send stuff out. Or if you want our basic PowerPoint, you see the email there, Michael at directsllp.com. And there's Angela's WeChat, which I couldn't read anything on it, but she's on it all the time, and she can always talk to you or your clients. Our office is in Arcadia. I have some employees in Palm Desert who are all working from home, so I haven't seen them in quite some time. And we have an office in Irvine too that we scuttle over to meet clients too. So we try to sort of navigate the whole kind of larger Southern California region for any foreign seller clients. The rest, and we have plenty of clients who are not from Southern California. We're selling real estate in San Francisco or Washington, D.C. or whatever. And we talk to them on the phone and on the email. It's a virtual world, and luckily that's not so bad for us. We're able to do most of the work on the phone and online. And, so if we can see them, we can. But if we can't, we can still do the work. We don't have to see the people. That summarizes our overview. We have 30 participants. If we have questions, we're here for you. You can type them, or I don't even know how to, I think type them if you want to have them. Oh, you have 9. Okay, hang on 1 second, guys. I'm sorry. Chat. Okay. We can hear me. This is being recorded. Okay. So it's questions are not mandatory, but I'm happy to answer them if you want. If you want to type them, or I don't know if Stephanie's there. Do I unmute everybody? Stephanie, can you unmute people, or does anybody want to ask a question or type it or ask it? I'm sorry, I'm a little out of my depth here on the Zoom. So I'll wait for a typed or asked question. And if we don't, we don't. So, we have a new message. Okay, let's see. What's our new message? Attendees, feel free to unmute or type questions. Okay. Any questions from the group? Oh, here we go. Here's a couple comments. Very good. We know, which I'll go back to the issue. I think it's an important issue, guys. The bank account issue. HSBC, we knew HSBC used to do it, but then that's right. Nazar, we know HSBC used to do it, and then we ran into problems with HSBC, and we don't think they do it anymore. We would have brought that up. So he's saying Arab Bank will do it. Any bank, or Saudi Exchange, or thank you, I'm going to look into those, because any bank that will open for someone a U.S. bank account from the foreign country, I think is a really valuable resource, and I'd like to know all that there are out there. And I think anybody helping a foreign client would do well to point out that I think very important. You don't want to have to wait for these checks. They should get a bank account. Just trust me on this, even if it's just for the one purpose of getting back a refund from the IRS and/or California. And they're not going to be here to do it, so it really is a good idea. And then they can close it for all I care. But they'll thank you for getting it in the first place. They really will. Money wired from China, then pay tax. Okay, money wired in from China, then buy real estate, pay tax for the money wired in, or not. No, there's no tax for money wired. Okay, so a couple points here, and I'll let Angela talk to this. There's no tax we don't tax, unlike Canada, which taxes some people for purchasing real estate. The United States does not tax a purchase. There's no tax to purchase real estate here. We see a lot of cases, to be clear, we've seen some where the money's never wired in from China, except for to pay the withholding taxes and for the realtor commissions and the escrow fees. The rest is handled outside of escrow between the two Chinese parties. That avoids having to send in a lot of money from China, and they have their own restrictions. We know that's a problem. So that's why we see a high prevalence in Chinese to Chinese transactions. That avoids having to send $1 million from China to the United States. You only have to send in 200,000 or 250 to pay for the withholding taxes and the fees, etc. There is no tax to wire money in from China, no, or any country. So the answer is no to that. Would I be opening? Sure, I'm open to talking to any clients. I talk all the time to clients, guys, for free. That's part of what we do. So please feel free to call me. You see our numbers at the bottom, 626-684-0428. And hopefully you can see that there. We will talk to any clients. We do it for free. Our fees are just based on if we do any of the tax work. So we consult for free all the time. Happy to do it. And it gets your clients ready for the transactions and so forth. There are some agents indicate they can use RMB to buy property. Yes, that's what we were just discussing. I'm going to let Angela talk about the second question. U.S. citizen money is gifted. Yes, no good. I'm going to let Angela go to the RMB question, but before there's a question below that says U.S. citizen money is gifted. U.S. citizens, guys, cannot be. Let me just address this U.S. citizen question for a second, and I see this a lot. We are assuming here we're not talking about U.S. citizens. So when foreign people give money to another, when foreign person gives money to a family member, the U.S. has no say over it. There's no tax whatsoever. Now, what foreign people cannot do, let me just take a little bit of a detour, is own a piece of U.S. real estate and then put a U.S. Relative, let's say, on the real estate, deed them on, shall we say, maybe to avoid the withholding tax, something like that. That is a gift. Anytime somebody is put on U.S. real estate, that is a tax gift, even if the person is a foreign person. So please do not go deeding people on and off U.S. real estate. That's a gift tax, 40% times the value of the real estate transferred. No deeding on and off, guys. That's a disaster waiting to happen. Please don't do that. Foreign people can give money to a person in the United States, and they can buy it, and there would be no gift tax there. So foreign people can give money and that's not a taxable transaction. They cannot put people on U.S. real estate. U.S. people, U.S. citizens cannot give money to anyone because we have our rules on gifting. So U.S. citizens have gift tax rules when it comes to money. Foreign people do not, but they do when U.S. real estate is involved. Let me let Angela talk about the RMB the RMB transaction and how it works. She'll talk.
Oh, this one is currently we see the most common is the buyer and the seller are both Chinese. So that's why since the seller has this withholding tax requirements, so the seller must prepare at least 20% times the sales price to cover the commissions and the selling expenses and the withholding tax. And so the rest of them, they could help to handle in China, which is the buyer could pay the renminbi, which is the Chinese currency, to the seller. That's what I know right now.
And tell the escrow it's paid outside of escrow.
Yes, right? They can pay the escrow outside escrow. Is that legal?
Yes,
it is.
Yeah, sorry, this is crazy. You can always tell the escrow company, everybody, the parties are always free to tell the escrow company, we paid for this outside of escrow. Now, not money to 100% of the proceeds never have to go to tell the escrow. We guys, we already paid each other outside. We're good. All the escrow is going to ask for then is the stuff they have to have. The escrow commissions, the realtor commissions, the natural hazard disclosure fee, and the withholding tax because they're foreign. That'll have to come in, even though that'll come back out. And again, I encourage you to get our normal PowerPoint on this to talk about how the withholding taxes work because they're foreign. That will have to be come in US dollars. The rest, I might put it more like at 75% because you probably need 25% US dollars to cover all that. The IRS withholding tax is 15%. The California is 3.3. The realtor commissions are whatever they are, and then the odds and ends. But the rest, you could say escrow. We've paid each other in RMB outside of escrow. That's all escrow needs to know. They don't need to know. They don't need to have all the money in US dollars to verify. The parties are allowed to tell escrow that they paid for it outside of escrow, and they will honor that. So that's why you see a lot of Chinese to Chinese transactions. Presumably, I'm not there. That gets around the capital outflow restrictions because 75% has gone to another Chinese citizen in China, and the banks are going to allow that. Is that right?
Yes.
So we're not seeing the same scrutiny apparently over money leaving, for the United States when it's paid simply to another Chinese citizen. That's what we're hearing, and so that's how a lot of transactions can take place if it's Chinese person to Chinese person. Most of the proceeds never have to leave China that way. It's legal. How do you handle a senseless change of ownership? Steve, I'm not sure what's legal here. It would still be a sale if that's the question. I'm not, Steve will have to be able to clarify. Oh, Steve, there are some, yes, RMB, yes. It's still a sale, Steve. We're still talking about a sale that will be recorded. There'll be a grant deed signed. Escrow will sign it. Again, we're just saying the foreign, most of the proceeds will be transacted outside of escrow. Perfectly legal, 100% legal. And escrow will honor that. It's just that some stuff they have to have in US dollars. But the rest, if the parties want to stipulate that it has been paid outside of escrow will honor that. So it should not be a problem. And then the assessor's change of ownership is just like a normal transaction. It's a sale. It's a good way to get around some of the capital outflow transactions. We obviously see a lot of Chinese to Chinese transactions. A lot of them are in heavily Chinese neighborhoods. And again, it's a workaround what we've seen are problems in the capital outflow areas because the Chinese government has gotten more aggressive in monitoring, money leaving the banks and coming to the U.S. and so forth. And I know there are creative ways around it, but it seems like it's a lot easier if it can be done, if it can stay in the country, than having to come to the U.S. Okay, do we have other questions? Okay, let's see. Let me just make sure everybody can see the, one second, can see the contact everybody. I don't know if this stuff is in the way or not. Anyway, once again, I'm not sure if you're seeing the questions or not. Let's see, how do I get this? 1 second, guys. Thank you guys, Chris. I appreciate that. Thank you guys. So if you want our basic email, So that means you don't have to that's right. Well, 75% of the funds you won't have to transfer out of China to buy property here. That's right. If it's Chinese to Chinese, okay? Otherwise, it's not going to work. That's right. 25% is going to have to come here to cover the withholding taxes and the realtor commissions and all that. Now, remember, the withholding taxes are refundable, but it'll have to be in US dollars regardless. So make sure. So, but yeah, 75% won't have to come here. That's exactly right. Okay, if you want the basic PowerPoint, I encourage you to get it on withholding taxes. If you haven't come to my presentations before, you should have it because it'll be good for your clients. Michael, I cannot tell if this is in your way or not. Hang on a second. Anyway, Michael, Michael at directsllp.com, and Angela's WeChat is
USCangie.
Yeah, she obviously speaks Mandarin and will speak to your clients in Mandarin, and even speaks Cantonese. I think she might speak French, but I'm not sure. So, do we have any other questions for the group? Well, looks like we're pretty quiet, and let's see how many we got. So yeah, okay, I want to thank everybody very much for coming. Make sure I got everything, and I wish you the best. Crazy times. Thank you for joining me and us in this presentation. Most unusual timing, but I wish everybody the best. I hope to meet everybody and see you in person down the road. God bless everybody. Take care. See you down the road. Okay.